Admiral Kethver stood at the center of his command bridge and looked out at the stars, with cold satisfaction in his four gleaming eyes. This was the moment he had waited for his entire military career, and nothing in the universe could take it away from him now. The bridge of the Eternal Supremacy hummed with activity as dozens of Velthran officers worked at their stations, their insectoid limbs clicking against control panels while data streams flowed across holographic displays. The flagship was a masterpiece of Velthran engineering, 3 kilometers of pure military power that had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds for over 200 cycles. Behind the Eternal Supremacy, stretching across the darkness of space like a swarm of angry predators, floated 200 warships of the Velthran hegemony. Each vessel bristled with plasma cannons and torpedo launchers, each one crewed by warriors who had never known defeat, and each one hungry for the glory that awaited them at their destination. "Admiral," called out Tactical Officer Vryn from her station, her mandibles clicking with barely contained excitement, "we are approaching the human colony designated New Horizon. Long-range sensors show minimal orbital defenses and approximately 15 patrol vessels in the system." Kethver let out a sound that served as laughter among his kind, a harsh clicking that echoed across the bridge and made his officers straighten with pride. 15 patrol vessels against 200 warships of the mightiest empire the galaxy had ever known. This would not be a battle but a slaughter. "Tell me more about these humans," Kethver commanded as he settled into his command throne, his chitinous body relaxing into the familiar contours of the seat he had occupied for 30 cycles of conquest. "I wish to understand the prey before we devour them." Scrutator Yeln, the fleet's chief intelligence officer, stepped forward with a data tablet clutched in his smaller manipulator arms. He was old for a Velthran, his carapace showing the gray patches of advanced age, but his mind remained sharp as a plasma blade. "The humans are a young species, Admiral," Yelm began, his voice carrying the dry tone of a scholar reciting facts to students who could never truly appreciate them. "They achieved faster than light travel only 200 of their years ago, which is barely a moment in the grand history of the galaxy. They emerged from a small blue world they call Earth, located in an unremarkable system on the outer edge of the Orion Arm." Kethver waved one of his larger arms dismissively. "Young and weak, as I suspected. Continue." "Their technology is primitive by our standards," Yelm went on, scrolling through his data. "They rely heavily on kinetic weapons, simple projectiles propelled by chemical or electromagnetic means. Their energy weapons are decades behind our plasma technology, and their defensive shields are laughably inadequate. Our analysts estimate that a single Velthran cruiser could defeat 5 of their largest warships with minimal difficulty." The officers on the bridge clicked their mandibles in amusement and contempt. The Velthran had conquered 17 starfaring civilizations over the past 10,000 cycles, and each conquest had been easier than the last as their technology advanced and their empire grew. What could these primitive humans possibly do against such overwhelming might? "There is one thing of note," Yell added, his tone becoming slightly more careful. "The humans are an unusually violent species. They have spent much of their history fighting wars among themselves, sometimes over resources, sometimes over territory, sometimes over beliefs and ideas that we cannot fully comprehend. They are fractured into many nations and factions, never truly united." Kethver rose from his throne and walked to the main viewport, his reflection staring back at him from the reinforced glass atoll. Powerful figure with a dark carapace that gleamed under the bridge lights and eyes that had witnessed the fall of empires. "A species that cannot even unite itself poses no threat to the hegemony," he declared with absolute certainty. "Their internal conflicts have clearly prevented them from developing proper military strength. They waste their energy fighting each other, while we have spent millennia perfecting the art of war." "Indeed, Admiral," agreed Fleet Commander Thesk. the second highest ranking officer in the invasion force. Our projections indicate that the conquest of this colony will take no more than 3 planetary rotations. The humans will surrender once they witness the true power of the Voltron hegemony, or they will die. Either outcome serves our purposes. The bridge crew responded with sounds of approval, their confidence absolute and unshakable. They had all seen the intelligence reports. All studied the human patrol vessels with their primitive weapons and thin armor. All concluded that this campaign would be remembered as one of the easiest victories in Voltron history. But as the fleet continued its approach toward New Horizon, a small vessel suddenly appeared on their sensors, a human ship, unarmed and broadcasting on all frequencies. It was a diplomatic courier, tiny and fragile against the might of the Voltron armada. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel," reported Communications Officer Kreth. "They are requesting to speak with the commander of our fleet." Kethver's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his species. How delightful. The prey wishes to beg for mercy before we have even begun. Open a channel, I wish to hear their pathetic pleas. The main view screen flickered to life, and the image of a human female appeared before the assembled Voltron officers. She wore a formal uniform of deep blue, and her face showed no fear, no panic, nor desperation, only a calm determination that seemed oddly out of place for someone facing certain doom. "I am Ambassador Sarah Chun of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps," the human announced, her voice steady and clear. "I have been authorized to deliver a formal warning to your fleet. You are entering sovereign human space with hostile intent, and if you proceed, there will be consequences that you cannot imagine." Laughter erupted across the bridge, harsh and mocking. The officers could not believe the arrogance of this tiny creature, standing alone against an empire that had crushed civilizations far greater than her own. "Consequences," Kethver repeated, savoring the word as if it were a particularly amusing joke. "Little human, do you understand what you are facing? We are the Voltron hegemony, masters of 1,000 worlds, conquerors of 17 species, rulers of an empire that spans half the galaxy. What consequences could your primitive people possibly threaten us with?" Ambassador Chun did not flinch, did not look away, did not show any sign of the terror she should have been feeling. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, and her next words carried a weight that seemed to echo across the void of space. "Turn back," she said simply. "You do not understand what you are provoking. The patrol ships you have seen, the colonies you have studied, the technology you have analyzed, none of it represents what humanity truly is. You are making assumptions based on incomplete information, and those assumptions will destroy you." Kethver felt a flicker of annoyance at the human's refusal to show proper fear. Did she not understand her situation, or was she simply too foolish to recognize her own helplessness? "Your words are meaningless," he replied coldly. "We have studied your species for many cycles. We know your capabilities, your weaknesses, your limitations. There is nothing you possess that can threaten us, and there is nothing you can do to stop what is about to happen." "Then I have failed in my mission," Ambassador Chun said, and for just a moment, something that might have been sadness crossed her features. "I was sent to give you one final chance to reconsider, to turn your fleet around before it is too late. You have chosen to ignore that warning, and now you will have to live with the consequences or die with them." The transmission ended abruptly, and the small diplomatic vessel began to turn away, preparing to flee back toward the inner human systems. "Destroy it," Kethver commanded without hesitation. "Let that be our answer to human warnings and human threats." Weapons Officer Dren did not hesitate. A single plasma bolt lanced out from the Eternal Supremacy, crossed the distance between the ships in an instant, and struck the diplomatic courier with devastating force. The small vessel vanished in a flash of fire and debris, leaving nothing behind but scattered atoms and the echo of Ambassador Chun's final words. The bridge crew cheered, celebrating this first kill of the campaign, as if it were a great victory rather than the execution of an armed messenger. Kefir allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before returning his attention to the task at hand. "All ships, increase speed to maximum," he ordered. "We will reach New Horizon within 6 hours and begin our conquest. Let the humans tremble at our approach, and let the galaxy witness the inevitable fall of another species before the might of the Velthran hegemony." As the fleet surged forward, racing toward the unsuspecting colony world like a wave of destruction that nothing could stop, Admiral Kefir felt only confidence and certainty. He had studied the humans, analyzed their defenses, calculated the odds of victory, and found nothing that could threaten his plans. But deep in the void of space, far beyond the reach of Velthran sensors, something stirred in response to the destruction of the diplomatic vessel. Messages raced across the vast network of human communications at speeds that would have seemed impossible to Velthran scientists. And ancient protocols that had not been activated in over a century suddenly came to life. Asterisk. The colony world of New Horizon hung in space like a blue and green jewel, beautiful and peaceful in the morning light of its yellow sun. From orbit, the planet looked like a paradise, with vast oceans and sprawling continents covered in forests and fields and the scattered lights of human settlements. But paradise was about to become a nightmare. The Velthran fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, 200 warships appearing in the space above New Horizon like a swarm of metal locusts descending upon a helpless crop. Admiral Kefir stood at his command post and watched the planet grow larger on his view screen with hungry anticipation in his ancient eyes. "Report," he commanded, his voice cutting through the tense silence of the bridge. 15 human patrol vessels detected, Tactical Officer Vryn announced. "They are moving to intercept our fleet. Orbital defense stations are powering up weapon systems, but their output is minimal, barely enough to scratch our shields." Kefir clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. Everything was proceeding exactly as his intelligence officers had predicted, and the humans were behaving exactly as expected, rushing forward to defend their world with whatever pathetic forces they could muster. "All ships, engage the enemy," he ordered. "Show them no mercy." The battle began. Plasma fire erupted from 200 Velthran warships, filling the space around New Horizon with deadly green light. The human patrol vessels were small and fast, darting between the incoming fire with surprising agility, but they were hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned. The first human ship died within minutes, its shields overwhelmed by concentrated plasma bombardment, its hull torn apart by the relentless assault. The crew had no chance to escape, no chance to surrender, no chance to do anything but die in the cold vacuum of space. A second ship followed, then a third, then a fourth. But the humans did not run. They did not retreat. They did not beg for mercy or broadcast signals of surrender. Instead, they fought with a ferocity that surprised even the veteran Velthran warriors. One patrol vessel, its shields failing and its hull breached in a dozen places, accelerated directly toward a Velthran cruiser. The small ship crashed into the larger vessel at tremendous speed, destroying both in a massive explosion that sent shockwaves rippling through the nearby formations. "They are ramming our ships," Fleet Commander Thask reported with a note of disbelief in his voice. "They are deliberately sacrificing themselves to take our vessels with them." Kefir watched as another patrol vessel repeated the suicidal tactic, crippling a Velthran destroyer before being consumed by fire. These humans were either incredibly brave or completely insane, and the Admiral was not sure which possibility disturbed him more. But bravery alone could not overcome numbers and firepower. Within 2 hours, the last human patrol vessel was destroyed, and the orbital defense stations followed shortly after. The Velthran had lost only 3 ships in the engagement, a trivial price for such a complete victory. "Begin the orbital bombardment," Kethver commanded. "Target their military installations and government centers. I want their leadership eliminated before we send in the ground forces." Plasma rained down upon New Horizon like fire from an angry god. Cities burned, defense bunkers melted under the relentless assault, and the screams of the dying echoed across emergency frequencies that the Velthram monitored with cold indifference. When the bombardment ended, Admiral Kethver ordered the invasion to begin. Thousands of Velthran soldiers descended upon New Horizon in heavily armored dropships, landing in the ruins of cities and the edges of population centers. They expected to find survivors ready to surrender, civilians too terrified to resist, a conquered people willing to accept their new masters. They found something very different. The first wave of ground troops landed in what had been the city of Haven, the largest settlement on New Horizon. They emerged from their dropships, expecting minimal resistance, but instead they were greeted by a storm of gunfire from every building, every rooftop, every window and doorway. Human soldiers had survived the bombardment by hiding in underground bunkers and reinforced shelters. They had emerged as soon as the Velthran landed, and they attacked with weapons that seemed crude but proved devastatingly effective. The kinetic rifles the humans used fired simple metal projectiles, nothing compared to the sophisticated plasma weapons of the Velthran. But those simple projectiles moved at incredible speeds, punching through Velthran armor with brutal efficiency. "They are using accelerated projectiles," a ground commander reported through the communication link, his voice tight with pain. "Their weapons are more powerful than our intelligence suggested. We are taking heavy casualties." Kethver listened to the reports from the surface with growing frustration. The conquest that should have taken hours was stretching into days, and his soldiers were dying in numbers that were supposed to be impossible. But it was not just the soldiers who fought. Civilians took up arms alongside the military, farmers and teachers and shopkeepers grabbing weapons from fallen soldiers and joining the resistance. Children helped carry ammunition and supplies. Old men and women provided information about Velthran movements, and the entire population seemed to transform into an army overnight. "Why do they not surrender?" Desk wondered aloud as he watched the casualty reports climb higher and higher. "They cannot win. They must know they cannot win. Why do they continue to fight?" Kethver had no answer. The other species the hegemony had conquered had always surrendered once the situation became hopeless, had always accepted defeat when victory was impossible. But these humans seemed to operate by different rules, seemed to find strength in situations that should have broken them. After 6 days of brutal fighting, New Horizon finally fell. The last human defensive positions were overrun. The last pockets of resistance were crushed, and the surviving population, nearly 400,000 people, was rounded up and placed in detention camps. Admiral Kethver descended to the surface to inspect his conquest, walking through the ruins of Haven with a guard of his finest soldiers surrounding him. The city was barely recognizable, reduced to rubble and ash by the combination of orbital bombardment and ground combat. "Bring me someone who can speak for these people," he commanded. "I wish to understand them better." His soldiers returned with a prisoner, a human female in a torn and blood-stained military uniform. She had been captured after single-handedly holding a defensive position for 12 hours, killing over 40 Velthran soldiers before her ammunition ran out. The woman was Colonel Maya Torres, commander of the New Horizon Defense Force. Despite her injuries, despite her defeat, despite the obvious hopelessness of her situation, she stood before the Admiral with her head held high and her eyes burning with defiance. "You fought well," Kethver admitted, studying this strange creature with genuine curiosity. "Your people fought better than any species we have ever encountered. But in the end, you fell, just as all species fall before the hegemony. Do you have anything to say before I decide your fate?" Colonel Torres looked at the Admiral with an expression he could not read, not fear, not despair, not even hatred. There was something else in her eyes, something that looked almost like pity. "You have made a mistake," she said quietly, her voice hoarse from days of shouting orders and breathing smoke. "You attacked the colony. You killed our people. You burned our homes and murdered our children. And now you stand here, expecting us to cower before you like all the others." Kethfer clicked his mandibles impatiently. "You speak as if you still have hope. Look around you. Human, your world is conquered. Your soldiers are dead or captured. Your fleet is destroyed. There is no hope left for you." "You do not understand," Torres replied, and that strange look of pity grew stronger in her eyes. "You have seen our patrol ships, our colony defenses, our civilian population taking up arms against your invasion. You think you know what humanity is capable of." She paused, and despite himself, Kethfer leaned forward to hear her next words. "You have not seen what we protect our colonies with," she continued. "You have not seen the ships we keep hidden in the dark spaces between stars. You have not seen the weapons we built during the centuries when we fought our own wars of extinction. You have not seen what happens when humanity stops pretending to be civilized." Kethfer dismissed her words with a wave of his arm. "Desperate threats from a defeated enemy. You have nothing that can challenge us, nothing that can threaten our empire. Your species is broken, and soon you will learn to accept your place as servants of the hegemony." Colonel Torres smiled, and somehow that smile was more unsettling than anything else she had said. "We will see, Admiral. We will see." Kethfer ordered her taken away to the detention camp with the other prisoners, but her words lingered in his mind like a poison that he could not purge. What had she meant about ships hidden in dark spaces, about weapons from ancient wars? The answer came sooner than he expected. Later that same day, as the Velthran fleet regrouped in orbit around their conquered world, a sensor officer aboard the Eternal Supremacy detected something strange, a massive energy signature approaching from deep space, from the direction of the human homeworld. "Admiral," the officer reported. Scrutator Yeln had not slept in 3 days. The old intelligence officer sat alone in his private quarters aboard the Eternal Supremacy, surrounded by holographic displays that flickered with data from 1,000 different sources. His eyes ached from staring at screens, his mind raced with theories and possibilities, and his heart pounded with a fear that grew stronger with every new piece of information he uncovered. Something was very wrong with everything the hegemony believed about humanity, and Yelm was determined to find out what. The mysterious sensor reading that had appeared after the conquest of New Horizon continued to approach, traveling through space at speeds that should have been impossible. It was still too far away to identify clearly, but the energy signatures it emitted were unlike anything in the Velthran databases. Admiral Kethfer had dismissed it as some kind of sensor glitch or perhaps a natural phenomenon, but Yelm knew better. He had spent his entire career studying alien civilizations, and he recognized the signs of something deliberately hidden. "Computer," he commanded, "access all archived records from the conquest of the Carthex Dominion 3,000 cycles ago. Search for any references to humanity or Earth or Sol system." The computer hummed as it processed his request, searching through ancient files that had not been accessed in millennia. Yelm waited with growing impatience, drumming his manipulator arms against his desk. The results appeared on his screen, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The Carthex Dominion had been one of the most powerful civilizations the hegemony had ever encountered. They had possessed technology that rivaled the Velthran, weapons that could crack planets, fleets that numbered in the thousands. Their conquest had taken nearly a century and had cost the hegemony more ships than any other campaign in history. But buried in the Carthex archives rise, captured during the final assault on their homeworld, Yelm found something unexpected: references to humanity. The sleeping giants, one document called them. a species of terrifying potential, hidden in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. They fight their own kind with weapons of mass destruction. They split the atom for both power and annihilation. They reach their moon using nothing but fire and determination. Yelm read on, his unease growing with every word. We observed them from afar for many generations, the Carthix record continued. We watched them wage wars that killed millions of their own kind. We watched them build weapons capable of ending all life on their world. We watched them come to the very edge of self-destruction and somehow, impossibly, step back from the abyss. The document's conclusion sent a chill down Yelm's spine. Do not wake the humans. Do not harm their young. Do not make them remember what they are. For if you do, you will face a fury that the galaxy has never seen. But the Carthix had been destroyed 3,000 cycles ago. How could they have known about humanity, a species that had only achieved spaceflight 200 years ago? Yelm dug deeper into the archives. He found more references in the records of other conquered species, fragments, and whispers from civilizations that no longer existed. The Vorlon Collective had called humanity the patient predators, while the Zentari Empire had referred to something called the Terran Doctrine. The Terran Doctrine, Yelm muttered to himself as he searched for more information. What is the Terran Doctrine? He found his answer in a corrupted file from the Zentari archives, partially recovered during their conquest 8,000 cycles ago. The humans practiced deliberate concealment, the file explained. They show the galaxy only what they wish it to see. Their patrol vessels are merely police craft, meant to handle minor threats and maintain order. Their true military power is hidden in shipyards that orbit dead stars and weapons platforms that drift in the void between systems. Yelm felt his manipulator arms begin to tremble as he read the next passage. We estimate that humanity maintains a secret fleet of warships numbering in the hundreds, possibly thousands. These vessels are designed for one purpose only: total war. The humans built them during their centuries of internal conflict, and they have kept them hidden ever since, waiting for a threat that justifies their use. The intelligence officer pushed back from his desk and tried to calm his racing thoughts. This could not be accurate. These records were thousands of cycles old, fragments from dead civilizations that might have been mistaken or lying or simply wrong. But then, why did the energy readings from the approaching object match nothing in the Velthran databases? Why had the humans fought so fiercely on New Horizon, refusing to surrender even when defeat was certain? Why had Colonel Torres smiled when she spoke of ships hidden in dark spaces? Yelm knew he had to bring this information to Admiral Kethver, but he also knew that the Admiral would not want to hear it. Kethver was a proud warrior who had never known defeat, and suggesting that his victory might be threatened would not be well received. Still, duty required him to speak. He gathered the most relevant documents and made his way to the bridge, where he found Admiral Kethver staring at the main view screen with an expression of irritated curiosity. The sensor reading had grown closer and clearer, though it still defied identification. Admiral, Yelm began carefully, I have found information that you need to see. It concerns the humans and their true military capabilities. Kethver turned to face his intelligence officer with a look of impatience. What is it, Scrutator? I have no time for speculation or guesswork. Yelm transferred his findings to the main display, and the ancient documents appeared before the entire bridge crew. He walked them through the evidence, the warnings from dead civilizations, the references to hidden fleets and secret weapons, the concept of deliberate concealment. When he finished, silence hung over the bridge like a heavy cloud. Fleet Commander Thesk was the first to speak. This is ridiculous. These records are thousands of cycles old. The species that created them are extinct. How can we trust their accuracy? The humans themselves were supposed to be primitives, Yelm countered. But their soldiers on New Horizon fought with weapons more powerful than our intelligence suggested. Their civilians took up arms and fought like trained warriors. Nothing about this conquest has matched our predictions. Cathver studied the documents with narrowed eyes, his mandibles clicking in a rhythm that indicated deep thought. You believe the humans have been hiding their true strength from the galaxy? I believe it is possible, Yelm replied. The approaching sensor reading supports this theory. Whatever is coming toward us is generating energy signatures that our computers cannot classify. It is either something completely new or something that has been deliberately hidden from galactic knowledge. Or it could be nothing, Cathver said dismissively, though his tone carried less certainty than before. A natural phenomenon, a sensor malfunction. Anything other than a secret human weapon. Admiral, a sensor officer interrupted, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. The approaching object has entered clear scanning range. We can now identify its basic parameters. Show me, Cathver commanded. The main view screen shifted to display the approaching object, and every Velthran on the bridge fell absolutely silent. It was a ship. But calling it a ship seemed inadequate, like calling a mountain a rock or an ocean a puddle. The vessel was enormous, dwarfing anything the Velthran had ever built. Sensors estimated its length at 20 kilometers from bow to stern, making it nearly 7 times larger than the Eternal Supremacy. Its hull was covered in angular armor plates that seemed designed to deflect weapons fire, and its surface bristled with weapons arrays of unknown design. That is impossible, Thesk whispered. No species could build something that large. Our shipyards could not even construct the framework. But there it was, growing larger on the view screen with every passing moment. A human warship, emerging from the darkness of space like a monster from an ancient nightmare. The Wrath of Terra, Yelm read from his data tablet, his voice barely above a whisper. That is what the human databases call ships of this class. There are supposed to be 12 of them, hidden in locations that even most humans do not know. Admiral Cathver stared at the approaching vessel with an expression that his officers had never seen before. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. Something that looked like the first cracks appearing in a wall of absolute confidence. All ships, battle stations, he commanded, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. Prepare to engage the enemy. But as the Velthran fleet scrambled to ready itself for combat, Yelm could not help but remember the final words from the Carthex archives. Do not make them remember what they are. It was too late for that now. The humans had remembered, and their wrath was coming. The UE Wrath of Terra emerged from faster-than-light travel with a flash of distorted light that temporarily blinded half the sensors in the Velthran fleet. Admiral Cathver gripped the arms of his command throne so tightly that his claws left marks in the metal. He had faced countless enemies in his long career, had stared down threats that would have broken lesser commanders, but nothing had prepared him for the sight that now filled his view screen. The human warship was a mountain of metal and fury, 20 kilometers of brutal angles and bristling weapons that seemed to radiate menace simply by existing. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, covered in armor plates that looked thick enough to shrug off nuclear explosions. Massive weapon arrays lined its sides like the spines of some prehistoric predator, and at its bow, painted in letters large enough to be visible from space, was its name, Wrath of Terra. By the Ancient Ones, Fleet Commander Thesk breathed, his voice barely audible. That thing is larger than our orbital stations. How can the humans have built such a vessel without anyone knowing? Sensor readings cascaded across every screen on the bridge, each one more alarming than the last. The ship's hull was composed of materials the Velthran computers could not identify. Its power output exceeded anything in their databases by several orders of magnitude. Its weapons signatures were so powerful that the sensors could barely measure them. Admiral, Tactical Officer Vryn reported, her voice trembling despite her attempts to remain professional. I am detecting over 300 individual weapons platforms on that vessel. Point defense systems, missile launchers, energy projectors of unknown type. Each of those weapons appears to be more powerful than our main battery cannons. Keffer forced himself to speak, forced himself to project the confidence that his officers needed to see. It is only one ship. We have 200. Numbers will prevail. All vessels, target that monstrosity and fire. The Velthran fleet responded with every weapon at their disposal. Plasma bolts shrieked across space in a deadly green storm. Torpedoes launched from 100 different ships. Concentrated firepower that would have reduced any known vessel to scattered atoms in seconds. The barrage struck the Wrath of Terra with enough force to crack a small moon. And nothing happened. The plasma fire splashed against the ship's armor like rain against stone, dissipating without leaving so much as a scorch mark. The torpedoes detonated against its hull in brilliant flashes that faded to reveal undamaged metal. The most powerful weapons the Velthran hegemony possessed had absolutely no effect. Impossible, Kethfer whispered. That is impossible. A communication channel opened, and a human face appeared on the main view screen, a woman in her middle years, with gray-streaked hair cut short and eyes that seemed to look through the Admiral rather than at him. She wore a uniform of deep black with gold insignia, and her expression carried the cold weight of absolute authority. I am Admiral Lin Chun of the United Earth Navy, she announced, her voice calm and measured. You have attacked a human colony world. You have killed human civilians, including children. You have been warned to turn back, and you ignored that warning. Keffer tried to respond, tried to project defiance in the face of this impossible situation. But before he could speak, Admiral Chung continued, I am not here to negotiate. I am not here to accept surrender. I am here to demonstrate what happens when you harm humanity. Watch closely, Admiral. This lesson will only be taught once. The Wrath of Terra fired. A single beam of blinding white light erupted from the bow of the human ship, a concentrated lance of energy that crossed the distance to the Velthran fleet in an instant. It struck a cruiser in the center of the formation, and the ship simply ceased to exist, not exploded, not destroyed, but vaporized completely, reduced to its component atoms in less than a heartbeat. But the beam did not stop. It continued through the space where the cruiser had been and struck the ship behind it, and the ship behind that, cutting through the Velthran formation like a blade through water. 30 ships died in the time it took Kethver to draw a single breath, their crews never knowing what killed them. Then the beam stopped, and silence fell across the fleet. That was a warning shot, Admiral Chun announced. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to receive boarding parties. If you comply, you will live. If you do not, you will die. The choice is yours. Panic erupted across the Velthran fleet. Ships began to break formation, some trying to flee, others firing wildly at the human vessel in desperate attempts to find some weakness in its armor. Discipline collapsed as centuries of military tradition crumbled in the face of genuine terror. Keffer watched his fleet fall apart and felt something he had never experienced before: true, absolute helplessness. Everything he had believed, everything he had built his career upon, was being destroyed before his eyes. Admiral, what do we do? Desk demanded, his voice cracking with fear. Our weapons cannot harm them. That single shot killed 30 of our ships. We cannot win this. Before Kethver could answer, the Wrath of Terra began to deploy smaller craft fighters and interceptors that launched from hidden bays along its massive hull. Thousands of them, swarming out like angry insects from a disturbed hive. The human fighters were fast, faster than anything the Velthran had ever seen. They accelerated at rates that should have killed their pilots, maneuvering with an agility that seemed to defy physics. Within seconds, they had surrounded the fleeing Velthran ships. But they did not destroy them. Instead, they disabled them precise shots that targeted engines and weapon systems without destroying the ships entirely. The humans were not trying to annihilate the fleet, Kethver realized. They were trying to capture it. They want prisoners, Scrutator Yelm said from his station, understanding dawning in his voice. They want witnesses. They want survivors who will return to the hegemony and tell others what happened here. A Velthran battleship, one of the largest vessels in the fleet, attempted to ram the Wrath of Terra in a desperate suicide attack. The human ship's point defense systems activated, and dozens of small weapons tracked the incoming vessel with perfect precision. The battleship was torn apart by thousands of individual shots, reduced to debris in seconds. More communication channels opened as Velthran captains began broadcasting surrender signals, their courage broken by the display of overwhelming power. The fighters accepted these surrenders, herding the disabled ships into groups while human marines prepared to board. Kethver watched it all happen with numb disbelief. 200 ships, the pride of the Velthran hegemony, defeated by a single human vessel in less than 10 minutes. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen once more. Admiral Kethver, your fleet is defeated. You can continue to resist and watch the rest of your ships be destroyed, or you can surrender now and save what remains of your people. I strongly suggest you choose wisely. Why? Kethver found himself asking, his voice hollow and broken. Why did you hide this? Why did you pretend to be weak? For a moment, something that might have been sadness flickered across Admiral Chun's stern features. Because we know what we are, Admiral. We know the violence we are capable of. Humanity spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other, building weapons of greater and greater destruction. We came within minutes of ending our entire species, not once but several times. She paused, and her next words carried the weight of terrible knowledge. When we finally reached the stars, we hoped we could leave that part of ourselves behind. We hoped we would never have to show the galaxy what humanity becomes when it goes to war. We built our warships in secret and prayed we would never have to use them. Her expression hardened. You should have listened to our warning. Kethver looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers Thesk, who had served with him for decades. Rin, whose tactical skills had won countless battles. Yelm, whose intelligence had predicted everything except this. All of them looked at him with eyes full of fear and desperation. All ships, Kethver said slowly, each word feeling like broken glass in his throat. Power down weapons and prepare to surrender. The battle is over. As the last Velthran warships went dark, as human marines began boarding operations across the defeated fleet, Admiral Chun's final words echoed in Kethver's mind. You should have listened. He should have, and now 400,000 human prisoners would be freed, and his fleet would be captured, and the Velthran hegemony would learn that some species were not meant to be conquered. The Wrath of Terra hung in space above New Horizon, silent and terrible, a reminder of what humanity could become when pushed too far. And somewhere in the depths of that massive ship, Admiral Chun sat in her command chair and felt no triumph, no joy, no satisfaction, only the grim necessity of what had been done, and the hope that it would never have to be done again. The detention camp on New Horizon had transformed in the hours since the battle ended. Where Velthran guards had once stood watch over 400,000 human prisoners, now human marines moved through the camp with medical supplies and food and blankets. The fences remained standing, but the gates were wide open, and the prisoners who had expected death or slavery were walking free into the arms of their rescuers. Colonel Maya Torres limped toward the main gate, supported by 2 young soldiers who had found her in the medical wing. Her wounds had been treated by Velthran doctors who had done their best with unfamiliar human anatomy, but she was still weak and exhausted from days of fighting and captivity. But she was alive, and her people were free, and that was more than she had dared to hope. For when she had looked up at the sky and seen the Velthran fleet blocking out the stars, a shuttle descended from orbit, bearing the insignia of the United Earth Navy. It landed in an open field near the camp, and when its doors opened, Admiral Lin Chun stepped out with a small escort of officers. Torres straightened as much as her injuries would allow and attempted something like a salute. "Admiral Chun, I cannot express how grateful we are. When the Velthran took the colony, I did not think any of us would survive." Chun returned the salute with crisp precision before her expression softened. "You and your people fought harder than anyone could have expected, Colonel. The reports from the ground battle have already reached Earth. Your resistance bought us the time we needed to deploy the Wrath of Terra." "I told them," Torres said with a weak smile. "I told their admiral that he had not seen what we protect our colonies with. I do not think he believed me." "He believes now," Chun replied grimly. "Come, there is someone who wishes to speak with you." Torres followed the admiral through the camp to a secured area where a temporary command center had been established. Inside, surrounded by armed guards and looking considerably smaller than he had appeared on the bridge of his flagship, sat Admiral Kethvar. The Velthran leader had been stripped of his weapons and insignia, his proud bearing reduced to the slumped posture of a defeated enemy. When Torres entered, he looked up with eyes that seemed to have aged centuries in just a few hours. "You," he said, recognition flickering across his features. "You are the one who warned me. You are the one who spoke of ships hidden in darkness." Torres nodded. "And you are the one who did not listen." Kethvar let out a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. "No, I did not listen. I was too arrogant, too confident in my own superiority. I thought your warnings were the desperate words of a defeated enemy, not a genuine attempt to save my people from destruction." He rose from his seat and approached Torres, stopping just short of the guards who tensed at his movement. "I need to understand. Why did humanity hide its true strength? Why did you pretend to be weak when you possessed such overwhelming power?" It was Admiral Chun who answered, stepping forward to stand beside Torres. "Because we remember what power does to those who wield it without restraint. We remember our own history, Admiral Kethvar, the wars we fought, the millions we killed, the weapons we built that could have ended all life on our world." She gestured toward the window, where the lights of rescued civilians flickered in the darkness. "When we reached the stars, we made a choice. We decided that humanity would present itself as peaceful, as moderate, as just another young species finding its way in the galaxy. We built our patrol ships and our colony defenses and let the universe see only what we wanted them to see." "But why?" Kethvar pressed. "With such power, you could have conquered the galaxy. You could have built an empire that would last forever." "We could have," Chun agreed. "And that is exactly why we chose not to. We have seen what empires become, Admiral. We have seen how power corrupts and how conquest breeds hatred. We did not want to become the monsters we had spent so long fighting against." Torres spoke up, her voice carrying the weight of personal conviction. "The Wrath of Terra and her sister ships were built as a last resort, a final option for situations where peaceful solutions were impossible. We hoped we would never have to use them. We hoped the galaxy would leave us alone and let us grow in peace." "But you did not leave us alone," Chun finished. "You came to our colony with 200 warships. You killed our people. You burned our cities. You took our civilians prisoner. You gave us no choice but to respond." Kethvar stood in silence for a long moment, processing everything he had heard. Finally, he asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the battle ended. "What happens now? Will you destroy the hegemony? Will you conquer our worlds as we tried to conquer yours?" Chun shook her head. "No, that is not who we want to be. Your fleet will be returned to you, though we will keep your weapons until we are confident you pose no further threat. Your prisoners will be released. Your wounded will be treated, and you will be free to return to your space." The Velthran admiral looked at her with something approaching disbelief. "You are showing us mercy. After everything we have done, you are letting us go?" "Mercy is not weakness," Chun replied firmly. "It is strength. It is the choice to break the cycle of violence rather than perpetuate it. We could destroy your hegemony, Admiral. We have the power to do so, but that would make us no better than you." She stepped closer to Kethver, meeting his eyes with an intensity that made even the proud warrior look away. "But understand this, our mercy is not unlimited. If you or any other species attacks human civilians again, if you threaten our colonies or harm our children, there will be no warning shots. No second chances, no survivors to tell the tale. We will do what we have always been capable of doing, and your civilization will become a cautionary story that other species tell their young." Kethver nodded slowly, the lesson burning itself into his memory. "I understand. I will return to my people and tell them what happened here. I will tell them of human mercy and human power, and I will recommend that the hegemony never again consider humanity as a target for conquest." "That would be wise," Torres said with a small, tired smile. "We really do prefer peace, Admiral. We just happen to be very good at war." In the weeks that followed, the surviving Velthran fleet was repaired and returned to hegemony space. Admiral Kethver delivered his report to the ruling council, describing in detail the power of the Wrath of Terra and the restraint the humans had shown in victory. The council listened in stunned silence, and when the report was finished, they immediately voted to reclassify humanity in their databases, not as a primitive species to be conquered, but as a threat that must never be provoked. Word spread across the galaxy through 1,000 different channels. Traders carried the story to distant ports. Diplomats shared it in quiet conversations. Intelligence agencies analyzed it with growing concern. The humans were not what they appeared to be. The humans had been hiding their true nature all along. The humans were capable of mercy, but they were also capable of destruction on a scale that defied imagination. Other species began to look at humanity with new eyes, not with fear exactly, but with a healthy respect that had not existed before. Trade negotiations became more favorable. Territorial disputes were settled peacefully. Diplomatic relations improved dramatically. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Wrath of Terra returned to its hidden berth, joining its sister ships in patient waiting. The massive vessel powered down most of its systems, its crew returning to their normal lives with the hope that they would never be called upon again. But they kept the ship ready, maintained it in perfect condition, trained new generations to crew its weapons and command its systems. Because humanity understood something that the Velthran had never grasped. True peace was not the absence of weapons. It was the wisdom to know when to use them and when to hold back. And if the galaxy ever forgot that lesson, if any species ever again mistook human kindness for human weakness, the sleeping giants would wake once more. The humans would remember what they were, and the universe would tremble.